and I'm Chief Reporter at Building. I'd love to welcome you to this webinar today. I'm really excited to be involved in this one because it's not my first one involved with the Construction Innovation Hub this year, and all of them have been great discussions so far, so I'm sure this will be no exception, particularly as we're going to be taking a look at everything that's been on offer this year. It's a bit of a roundup of 2021 from the Hub. I'd love to start off by welcoming my panellists, Trudy Sully, Jill Keller, Keith Waller and David Billett. And I just briefly like to run through how today's session is going to run. Things are going to kick off with presentations from our panellists. We really want the audience to get involved, so please send through questions at any time. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what you want to know. So send those through. We'll be then having a Q&A session as well, so that's great. Something that always comes up in the questions, which I'm just going to head off now, hopefully, is yes, this session will be available on demand. You can share it afterwards with anyone else who hasn't seen it, who you think could get value from it. It will still be free. It will be available via the same link if you want to go back and check something. We always get that multiple times, so hopefully now everyone knows that it will be there. I think that's probably enough from me. So without too much more, I'm going to hand over to Keith to kick things off.
Thanks, Jordan, and good morning, everyone. So thanks for coming on. What we're going to try and do today is run through a bit of an overview of what's happened in the Construction Innovation Hub over the past year, and try and point forward to where we think a lot of our activities moving into 2022. So I've just got a few slides, but you'll hear from me and then from Trudy and then from Jill and then from Dave before we get on to the Q&A. So in reality, we're now entering the sort of third, finishing on the third of our fourth year of our four-year program. Now, we were funded through the construction sector deal, as I'm sure you know, with about £75 million worth of funding from UKRI, and really the hub made up of the three partners of BRE, CDBB and MTC. But actually, you know, our program has really been about co-delivery rather than self-delivery. So we've had over 600 industry partners working with us on all aspects of our program, from the digital, from the assurance, from the manufacturing, from the value toolkit side, which has really sort of helped accelerate and drive our program. Because really what we're trying to do is not just produce self-produced output, but something that's of great use to industry and clients to try and do that. So we've really worked very closely with government and tried to help shape the policy environment through things like the construction playbook and the transforming infrastructure performance roadmap, and really making sure we're not duplicating or replicating things that are being done elsewhere. So very closely aligned with the work that's happening through the Construction Leadership Council and their roadmap to recovery, as well as making sure we're linked in with those other activities happening throughout the Transforming Construction Challenge, things like the Active Building Centre, Department for Transport TIES program, their Living Lab. And there's a huge amount of R&D and solutions that are coming out through the challenge, as well as those wider initiatives. So we want to try and make sure we're able to join up and amplify with those. But really part of our mission really is about how do we deliver some impact from the work we're doing. We're not aiming just to produce stuff that can sit and gather dust in the cloud or on a website. So it's not just about producing the technical outputs. And again, as I say on these slides, I think it's worth emphasising the Construction Innovation Hub is not here to be a market player. We're not looking to displace or take a position in the market. What we're trying to do is enable the market to succeed. So that means, you know, we have to work, you know, with industry to help them succeed. So actually, you know, whilst we are funded as an R&D program, and we are, you know, looking at perhaps three routes to try and support the sector's transformation. The primary one, the obvious one, is through an R&D program, is looking to develop those technical solutions, those tools, products, processes, and you'll be hearing more from Trudy and Jill and Dave in a bit more detail about those later. And those things that really support the ambitions of the construction sector. How do we improve value for money? How do we speed up delivery? How do we accelerate a path to net zero? How do we drive greater social value, etc.? And of course, but for that to be successful, we need someone who wants to buy it, someone who you know, clients need to want and recognise the value for this. So we've spent quite a lot of our effort working with government and policymakers to try and create the right policy environment that enables these new innovative solutions to be adoptable and desired by clients to deliver their investment portfolios. And of course, in parallel with that, we need to make sure there is the building the capability and capacity in the market to be able to respond. So really it's the holy trinity of having a product or a solution that meets the ambition of the sector deal, having someone who wants to buy it, and having someone who's able to deliver it. And that's really how we want to see the impact moving forward. It's not for us to be a market player. We want to try and enable that market to succeed moving forward. So with that, I'm just going to talk, before I hand back to Jordan and for Trudy, talk about a little bit about the Value Toolkit, which is one of the key outputs of our program, and talk about what we've done and what we're planning to do moving forward with that. So for those of you who don't know, the Value Toolkit is something that is very strongly aligned with the government's construction playbook and the ambition of TIP, and it's about how do we actually make better value-based decisions rather than how do we make something as cheap as possible and transfer as much risk as we can to the market. It's about making better decisions that support that transformation of the sector, that drive better outcomes, social, economic and environmental outcomes from the huge investment we make in the built environment each year. And of course, it's a tool primarily for clients to work with their suppliers to try and make a more consistent approach to how they set out their value drivers and their objectives, recognising that in many cases, particularly in the public sector, the government clients are operating under the same strategic policy environment. And really, if they're able to set out their value drivers in a more consistent and clear way, that will help the market understand them in a way that they can develop their own skills and capabilities and their offerings to meet those particular demands. So really it's about, how do we make better decisions as we move forward throughout that. And of course, what we try and do, is trying to answer the question, why should we do this? What's the purpose? And we do, and the feedback we're getting from private sector clients and from public sector clients is they are operating in an increasingly complex and rapidly evolving decision-making environment. The policy environment, for example, in government around net zero, around social value, around biodiversity, around value, around project speed, all of these policy drivers, and many of them set out in both the construction playbook and in TIP, are presenting clients with challenges about how do they respond, how do they actually take account of those policy drivers that are shaping what they're being asked to do in a way that enables them to meet their own outcomes and deliver some of those broader outcomes as well. So we need to try and help clients make better choices that actually support there. And of course, one of the graphic on the right-hand side of the slide is really that value profile that we expect to see coming out of the Value Toolkit process. And where we are at the moment with the Value Toolkit is we've just finished a piloting phase over the summer, which will lead to the publication of the full toolkit. But we have been trialling it on projects and programs, 140 plus suppliers working on piloting this on projects worth many billions of pounds to try and road test the Value Toolkit to see if it is helping make those better value-based decisions, that it will help driving those better outcomes from the investment we're making. So really it's, you could argue it's a bit of a process with some tools and guidance that enables people to make value-based decisions. And really it's about how do we help people do that. We're not trying to change government policy. What we're trying to do is provide them with tools and an approach to help them define their value in a more consistent and transparent way, take a better approach to risk, set out the right client's approach in terms of commercial strategies and delivery models for their projects and programs. How do we measure and evaluate whether these are indeed delivering those better outcomes, and also support with how clients can appoint their professional and their supply chain teams through that process. So really the Value Toolkit now, having finished the pilot phase, we're going through the feedback that's come from the use of the toolkit on these 140 odd projects and programs with our partners, and then we'll aim in the spring next year to launch the full Value Toolkit as a free-to-use tool for clients and their advisors to help drive those value-based decisions. And we expect to see things that are impacting across the whole investment lifecycle, better decisions up front, better procurement choices being made, better delivery of projects and programs, and also better operational assets that enable us to support that long-term transformation of the sector. So really it's an enabling tool that will try and unlock some of the things you'll hear around the digital solutions, around the assurance, and next from Trudy around how we're approaching a new way to manufacturing and platforms that support the delivery of the government's multi-year, multi-billion-pound investment programme. So with that, Jordan, I'll stop sharing now and hand back to you for Trudy. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Keith. What a great way to kick things off. I think that's a really good overview of what's been going on. Trudy, I'm going to hand over to you now. So just let me know if that all fine.
That come up now?
Perfect.
Brilliant. So good morning, everybody, and I'm just going to give you a very quick run through of the activity over this year in relation to the manufacturing processes that we're introducing for construction, and particularly, as you'll have heard Keith mention already several times, that word platform. Now, this has caused some confusion, and you know what, we're still developing this approach and what it actually means and how the words from the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap to 2030 about the potential mandate for a platform approach can be realised. And over the next few days, actually, there's going to be a report released, and a lot of those details and a lot of the language is in there. So anything I refer to here that you're not quite sure about will be in that report, and it will be shared on social media. So we've had a really interesting year, and like everybody is saying, it has gone so quickly, it's unbelievable. But just a quick reflection back to where we started, and Keith again mentioned the policy that's coming through, and we talk about this a lot, and you know, there's lots of different interpretations of it, but the fact is that we've got all of the ammunition, all of the material that we actually need now to be able to drive forward change and adoption of new systems and processes that can really help the sector to transform. And it's all in these documents, and it's built up over these last few years, and it's enabled us to really drive the development of these approaches and processes, and get even more engagement across the board from industry and from government. So early this year, and sort of towards last year and into this year, one of the elements that was really key to proving the value of these approaches was demonstrating that there was the capacity and the demand for manufacturing approaches in construction. And through that report that we published early this year, and it's available on our website as well, defining the need, we identified this really significant proportion. So we looked just at a £50 billion pipeline, but of that we realised, and it was analysed, that we could probably deliver about 70% of it across a common mid-span system, and with application of MMC and platform approaches for delivering. And about 13 billion of that total could possibly be delivered through one platform system. Now that is down the line. This is once they are much more developed, but it shows the potential from this approach and from standardizing elements of what you deliver, but also enabling a significant amount of diversity. It also showed more than 50% of spaces across the 5 government department pipelines we looked at are actually quite common. So that transferability across different types of built assets is really key when adopting manufacturing processes, because those economies of scale are key to the success of this and driving down that cost. I've been hearing lately about projects which are due to be delivered through off-site, and some of the cost elements have actually been prohibitive. Now, the value toolkit that Keith talked about helps look at a much wider perspective and story to support investment, but what we need to do is actually look at the aggregation of demand to be able to really realise the benefits of adoption, and that will bring down the cost point as well as increasing the value and the quality. So what we actually done since that is some more work looking at the government pipelines and looking at the government's current level of specification, so how much detail they have about the buildings that they need delivered and how that information is shared, and sort of the digital elements of it too, and how well that is defined. And what we'll be releasing early in the new year is a route map for the government departments to move forward. This will help with that harmonising element and the aggregation of demand, and make that a more confident market for the industry to invest and for the government side to procure through a platform approach and offset in general. We then held consultations with a wide range of partners, from clients to SMEs and everything in between, about the benefits and the blockers. So we've got some really good analysis of the opportunities, the real high points, the real advantages, as well as those areas which are still a challenge that we need to overcome. And this is helping inform the programme going forward. And so what we committed to in those policy documents, and is really specifically outlined, particularly in the TIP roadmap, is about offering up the guidance, this rule book of how to develop and adopt a platform approach. So this last few months, we've been building up this product platform development framework. It's quite a mouthful, but it's about breaking down the stages that we think companies or organizations need to go through to be able to develop their own platform approach and their own product platform systems. And there's a whole range of levels here, but they are, at the moment, we've got this sort of in a fairly sort of staged approach. But what we're recognizing is that those doing it already have come at this from different angles and different positions and different stages. So we're working with them to build case studies to actually support the development for others to get on board with this approach too. So the report details this in much greater level. It has these stages here of the framework, as well as these different elements of the rule book and how that will actually be actively used. So rather than take up any more time, look out for that publication. It'll be out on social media and accessible on our website hopefully next week. And of course, we can answer any questions. And then I will hand back over.
Thanks so much for that, Trudy. And that's something that we'll all have to keep our eyes out for. Sounds like some exciting stuff coming down the pipeline there. I will just quickly answer a question that has popped in. Yes, the recording is shared. It will be available by the same link you're watching now. We'll push it back out again on all our socials. That Hub will have access to that as well. You'll be able to view it all. It's still free. So yes, that will be available. Next, I'm going to hand over to Jill. If you could just pop your camera and mic on for me.
Thanks, Jordan. I seem to have lost my slides. Would you be able to share the slides for me, Jordan, please?
Oh, sure. If you just give me 2 seconds. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the right spot in the deck. Okay.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks, Jordan. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Jill Kelleher, Impact Director for the Construction Innovation Hub, and thank you for joining me today. So we've all heard from Keith and Trudy already this morning about some of the tools that the Hub are creating to help government achieve its TIP roadmap and construction playbook ambitions. So next slide, please. To enable industry to make this massive cultural shift to new ways of working, the BRE Assurance team has been developing a number of tools to help industry move towards the standardisation of platform systems through the development of a platform quality assurance framework. And as part of that process, what we're doing is looking at how we can bring together different elements of some of the parts that Trudy's already mentioned and bring them together in an overarching quality framework. And as part of this process, we've been developing a range of tools such as the construction quality planning process tools, the lexicon templates, conformity route to assessment, and digital route to compliance tools, and also working on a number of Pathfinder and demonstrator projects to demonstrate how these can be applied in real life, and also create an evidence base that we can use to support those policy ambitions moving forward. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as part of this approach, we have created what's called the construction quality planning process tools, and also digital compliance verification process guidance. And what we've created is a range of guidance documents and tools which can support industry gear up to deliver the transformation necessary. These processes aren't new necessarily. They've been adapted from other sectors to build on quality that's been used by other advanced manufacturing sectors already, which are used to design out risk at the very start of the product development cycle, which inevitably provides a systematic manufactured approval process so that you can actually track when you're creating that product right through to the end of its life. And if there is a failure, how you can rectify that as part of those approved processes. And what we've done is created a range of tools to support that process and adoption within the construction sector, particularly for when we're using platform system. This inevitably provides a robust quality control and assurance process to ensure those finished solutions can be manufactured at volume and safely to meet growing demand even. And obviously this is critically important when we look at the new regulations coming forward and what that means in the future in terms of what is deemed to be a safety critical, non-safety critical, or will be on a safety critical list and so on. And those regulations are currently being developed, obviously with government. Next slide, please. Oh, previous slide. Thank you. So over a year ago, we consulted with industry about this range of tools, the construction quality planning tools. And since then, we've developed a series of guides and documents and also tools to support those processes. We've launched these internally with our platform partners, and what we'll be doing is next year launching them for industry to benefit from these and some of the solutions to support their businesses adapt these new ways of working, because it is a massive cultural shift, as we've already said. So watch this space and we'll be giving updates next year. Okay, next slide, thanks. So in addition to these tools, we've also been creating a digital routes of compliance tool whilst also investigating the testing and validation methods necessary for platform components to support product development and conformity assessment, which again, as you can imagine, in face of the new regulatory changes, this is going to be incredibly important. Okay, next one, thank you. We are also extensively supporting government's new information mandate, which again is detailed in the playbook and the TIP roadmap, by creating a range of products and solutions to help digitalise building regulations, digital twins and product information to ensure that we create consistent product templates and also help standardise data and the use of data and information within the construction industry supply chain and help the sector gear up to that. Next couple of slides, please. Thank you. So I'm not going to dwell on the next few slides, so we can skip to the last one, because in the interest of time, I know that we might be able to expand on this later in the questions and answers. And now I'd like to hand over to Dave that can talk some more about digital. Thank you.
Hi, Dave. I'm just giving you access now.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks so much for that.
Thank you. No problem. Thank you, Jill. And good morning, everyone, from a very cold Scotland today. So looking forward to taking you through our digital thematic areas. 2 seconds, going to share my screen. Jordan, if you can tell me when you can see your screen.
That's perfect.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. And again, good morning, everyone. I'm David Philp. I'm one of the Impact Directors. And I'm really talking about our work in the context of digital. And again, I think it's been a really busy year for us. And I think one of the big things, it's not just been about digital in terms of new projects or new capital investments, but also thinking more and more about how do we digitize the assets we've already got in terms of what we are calling the digital estate, how to do it in terms of security minded, and how do we make sure that we're also thinking constantly about environmental, social, and governance as well. We're working across our home nations. We chair, it's called the Home Nations Working Group, to make sure that we're all coordinating and sharing ideas, but we also work with our building client group as well to make sure It's not just about public sector digitization, but also private sector as well. So hopefully one of the good things, it's coming up to Christmas, and everything I'm going to show you today is available and ready and free of charge. So if you're looking for a gift for a loved one or just something to read in the run up to Christmas, hopefully you'll get some good ideas as well. One of the things that's probably came through today is about TIP 2030, the Transforming Infrastructure Performance, and that roadmap to 2030. And I think it's really pivotal to our digital journey and to industry as well within there. And I think you can see within the diagram, we're starting to think about policymakers, project sponsors, and asset owners, but starting to think about the need to clearly define required strategic outcomes for a project. And from us in terms of digital, having that clear purpose is hugely important. But also, how do we make sure that we can translate these outcomes into long-term digital delivery strategies? How is our data and how's our digital ways going to help support that as well? And you can see one of the great things about TIP is it starts to set out, giving us very clear direction why we're doing. You can see up the top there, societal outcomes, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, translating it down the way through policy. What decisions do we have to start to make at network, at asset levels as well? But also coming from the bottom up, what does that mean in terms of everyday data, information requirements, and how does digital twins start to think? And it's also starting to think about systems of systems and the need to actually better measure the performance of our assets. So thinking about high performance assets are hugely important. And this slide is really important to us because it actually underpins and frames a lot of the work we're doing. And if anything, when you think about that slide and the TIP roadmap, it's starting to think about creating, if you like, a line of sight between a big idea such as United Nations Sustainability Development Goals and the everyday bits of information that we are containing in our projects. And one of the things that we've created with the programme, with the Cambridge Centre for Smart Infrastructure Construction, is a line of sight for asset management methodology to support organisational objectives. It's a simple framework, it's free of charge, and again, we reckon it works for many different projects, and also to help especially your clients, or if you are a client, in terms of working in terms of organisational information requirements when you're doing BIM. You can see the framework from identifying organisational objectives to the critical success factors to the very simple concept of what are the plain language questions we need to answer and what are the pieces of data and information that will support. One of the big things as well, it starts to think about what information do we need at a boardroom level to be able to understand these organisational objectives right down to an asset level. And one of the things that starts to look at is that translation between the boardroom and the project in terms of what we call functional information requirements. But again, it's a free, simple to use framework. We've done a workshop with Environment Age at Digital Construction Week just to show how it can work. But please, so again, it's ready now and you can download it and have a look at it as well. One of the other key things, again, in case you haven't seen it, that TIP sets out is an information management mandate. And this is us moving a what was the construct of BIM level 2 to now lining with international standards such as ISO 19650. In the UK, we're lucky enough to have a UK BIM framework that sets all this round with free guidance round about it. And again, if you do go into it, you'll start to see all the different requirements and therefore government departments and how that's going to cascade down to projects in the public sector. But one of the key things you can see there is thinking about information requirements, being able to define information requirements. And if anything, if I can ask you to do one thing today, it's look at the work that, not just the work we're doing in terms of Construction Innovation Hub, but the work that the UK BIM Alliance is doing with the Centre for Digital Built Britain and their standards body, creating free to use guidance that's going to help you be able to implement BIM, to the UK BIM framework, that is simple and easy to use. You can see the framework within there, the guidance has been split up into different parts in terms of delivery, operational within there, and there's much more that's going to help you through it, and that's all free to use. So if you're going to start somewhere with your digital journey and you haven't already, please start the UK BIM framework and the guidance that sits around about it. Again, all free to use, bite size, and again, it comes nice and easy to navigate around in terms of what you're doing as well. One of the other reports, again, it's available just now, I suggest you use as well, is have a look at the value of information management and the construction and information sector. It's a fantastic report. It shows the value of the information management. It's essentially at the high level a benefits framework, but it's evidence-based, and it probably shows the value for investing in information management, and it shows it as being threefold, as you can probably see within the screen, in terms of direct productivity gain for organisations for better information management, how it can actually help in terms of increased growth across the wider UK sector, but also, and back to what Keith was saying about value, how it can help us drive social value to society and the environment through higher quality outcomes as well. So again, it's a framework, and it'll help you in terms of the benefits case, especially if you're building an information management approach within your organisation. So it's very key to everything that we are doing within our work and within our journey as well. One of the other things that Keith mentioned was the need to build capability and capacity. We've created a digital capabilities framework. It's a framework that's especially aimed at early career professionals across the built environment disciplines. And it shows, if you like, the key areas of digital capabilities, the thinking about through data analysis and consultation with industry. It looks at things such as the needs in terms of, disciplines now looking at data collection, instrumentation, as I mentioned, information management, but also how do we interpret data and analyze it, governance it, and visualize it as well. So again, a simple to use framework, which I'm sure will benefit your own organizations within their journey. One thing I think, excuse me, has been key to our journey is government soft landings. How do we bridge that chasm between construction and operation? And we've been doing lots of work in supporting government departments. If you go into the website, you'll find lots of interactive navigators as well. But one of the key things we've been focused on this year is looking at carbon in terms of operational exchanges within there. And you can see we've now got a free to use framework that's going to help you in terms of carbon-based decision making. But also, you can see on the right-hand side there, we also have a free to use toolkit as well that's going to help you in terms of looking at energy performance, especially to create high performance assets as well. And we'll continue to grow these tools as well. But just to say, the framework and the tool set, the initial tool set, is free to use and available to download just now. Finally, we're also helping in terms of organizations in terms of digital twin journeys, and we've created a real framework that's going to help, especially looking at the benefits and value architecture if you are thinking about a digital twin model, but also looking in terms of proportionality, looking at growing sophistication. But if anything, a framework when you come in is going to help you start to think about digital twin journeys for users, how they'll actually use it, and start to think about the benefits framework for a digital twin as well. So a bit of a canter through our digital work, but just to say, everything I've shown is free. It's ready to download just now, and I hope you enjoy some happy knowledge.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, David. I'm just going to ask everyone if you could turn your cameras back on and your mics on so we can jump into the Q&A. And to our audience, please do feel free to send through those questions. We've already had a few come through, but happy to have as many as possible come through so we can cover off as much as possible. That was so insightful and covered so much ground there. I do have a quick question for all of you that I think might be a nice way for us to start off the Q&A. Out of all the things that just discussed, could each of you maybe tell me the thing that you've been most excited about from the Hub's work this year? And Keith, you went first, so maybe I'll pick on you first this time.
I think the engagement we've had from both policymakers and from the market, from industry as well, because one of the sort of risks with an R&D program is you produce something that's technically magnificent and is never used. So the fact that we've had, very proactive engagement from government who want to, embed and adopt some of the things we're doing, and we've got such strong support from industry. So there's lots of great individual technical outputs we've produced, but the impact comes from, having a supportive and enabling policy environment with clients who want to do it, and a market that really wants to sort of transform and support itself to be more productive and sustainable in the future. So it's actually the impact we're able to deliver more than the technical stuff that I think will really be a strong legacy from the program.
Brilliant. Trudy, you were next, so why don't I swing back to you?
I probably would have picked on some of the government work myself, but as Keith got there, I'll go with the collaboration in industry, because we've in a tough environment, we've got really broad range of major and minor players that are working together on specific projects within the programme to overcome common challenges together to be able to then go and compete again in the market, and getting, you know, companies that have actually been strong competitors sharing their knowledge in these workshops to be able to develop these tools is a huge asset to us and will be for the industry going forward.
Brilliant. And Jill?
Wow. I'm just excited by that whole of sort of the hub programme, but certainly, like Keith and Trudy have said, that shared collaboration. But basically, some of the tools that we've been working on since the hub has started are now coming to that point where we're ready to share them with industry for them to really adopt them and engage. So, for example, you've got the client requirements and new regulation and forces, whereas the solutions where the industry can adopt them and actually use them to demonstrate their compliance, or again improve the processes to reduce risk from the building. And certainly from the CPQP aspect, there's a range of tools that already we're working with the platform partners in industry, early adopters, to show how they can improve factory production controls and change control processes, first article inspections and things like that, and how they can really help enhance those businesses, improve productivity, which ultimately helps reduce carbon emissions and so on. So, and this is just the start of the journey, and I'm just so excited about it all.
And David, last but not least.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. I'm like a broken record with this when we answer the question. For me, it's about soft landings. I mean, soft landings for me it's got an elegant simplicity to it. It's about, and actually, let's go back to TIP. You know, at the end of it, it's about starting with the end in mind. You know, what we're trying to achieve in terms of outcomes. It's about a golden thread, but it's about a golden thread of purpose as well as information. It's about involving the end users right from the very start and maintaining their voice right the way through it within there. But the big thing as well is we're thinking about testing performance. We're starting to think about setting performance targets, actually testing them at early design stages within there. But the big part, it's involving people right the way through it. It's about learning lessons, about structured feedback. In terms of the impact, I think it's had, and go back to real things. We work very closely with our National Health Service in Scotland as one of our partners, and there's a big project up in Aberdeen, and the lady in charge of it, she's a clinician by background, and she said it's the first time I can really understand how construction is going to help me achieve healthcare objectives, and they've been rolling it out at scale within there. And I think for me that that simple elegance of we actually build infrastructure in our buildings to actually achieve something, and to me it creates that connection.
Absolutely. Okay, brilliant. And something that all of you have touched on in different ways is things that are going to happen next year, whether it's the product platform development framework or the CPQP tool sets, or the value toolkit, which is all coming. Are there some dates and things we should have in the diary, or rough ideas of what's the sort of timeline looking for some of these things coming out next year?
So shall I kick off on that? So our funded programme runs through till the end of September 2022. So that's the end of our the Transforming Construction Challenge programme. We are not going to hold everything back until that end date, and we will phase out and we'll phase release things as we go through. And one of the sort of key areas, let's take the value toolkit as an example. One of the great things about the toolkit itself was we had over 600 people working with us, so there's quite a lot of appetite from clients and the market in there. But rather than launch something that was perhaps ineffective, we ran a pilot program which finished at the end of November. So our aim is a date for the diary. And I just spent 10 years working in government, so I'm going to say spring, which is a fairly broad term, but I would imagine around about the start of next financial year we'll be launching that as a real tool. And of course, when we ran the pilot program, we were really keen to try and get, we set ourselves an ambition of trying to get 20 people, 20 organisations to pilot it, and we wanted to try and get about £500 million worth of projects where it's being tested on. We ended up with 141, and we had to close applications, because we couldn't handle any more. And it's many billions of pounds worth of projects and programs where it's being trialled on. So we are quite confident that it's something that will deliver on its objectives, but that will be spring, which you can perhaps read April.
No worries. Anybody else got anything to push Mark down?
Yeah, so the rule book first draft is being finalised now in terms of internal circulation and review. So that's across our platform partners, about 40 members, partners there. And we expect to publish that, I'll go late winter. Any advances on? There'll be like 2 or 3 iterations of the rulebook next year, so it's going to come out quite raw, but we want people to actually get engaged then, so it'll be quite an iterative process. So we'll have a target of in the next couple of months for the first version, and then probably in early summer, and then a final version released before the end of the programme.
Yeah, and from our side, certainly early between the new year and spring, we'll be releasing a range of a campaign around CPQP, which will include a series of videos and interviews with some of the pioneers from the programme that have been applying these CPQP tools and how it's helping their businesses improve those system processes. And also, just with reference to product data templates and the lexicon, we recently did a consultation and published responses to that consultation a few weeks ago. And again, from the new year, they'll be working on developing case studies with industry and how those templates can be applied again. And also some of the other tools will be ready, and we'll be engaging with government departments around some of the new proposals and changes to construction product regulations and how they might be able to benefit industry gear up to support that change as well.
Brilliant. And David, did you have anything that I should try and
definitely.
get out of you?
We've got lots of things coming out through our information management projects between now and March, but probably one of the biggest ones, and you'll start to see it probably around about February, March time, is the next generation of, I mentioned operation and performance carbon tools. And in March, we'll see the launch of our new toolkit there, which will, again, be a proof of concept level, but again, be ready for organisations to be able to use. But again, as I mentioned, the first one's out just now. Feel free to download it, play about with it, and get ready for the next one in March.
Brilliant.
Can I just add as well, while I remember, we are, as a hub, we do a tremendous amount of different workshops on all of these different tools and what have you. And again, you know, check out the website for more information. And we also collaborate a lot, obviously, through the Construction Leadership Council and also Constructing Excellence in supporting this as well. So if people do want to get in touch, please do.
Jill, something you did just mention there was the lexicon, and I know they're the slides we moved through a bit quickly in the presentation, but because I get to see behind the curtain, I did have a look at those earlier today. And there was some really interesting stuff there. So I was wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit more about that now, if you didn't mind.
Yeah, sure. Shall I share my screen on that?
Oh, if you want to. Otherwise, you feel free just to run us through some of the key points.
Yeah, no, okay. Yeah. So basically, the Lexicon project has been developing a methodology to look at how you'd create take data dictionaries and product information into a standardized format within construction. So I've been working in the construction industry a very long time. So you used to manually do data entry into spreadsheets, which would then put that information into product, say cost data sheets and things like that. It basically means all of that information that you have to capture that you would have done inside the old world is now going to be put into a format that is digitalized in code so that it can then be linked through to the relevant templates and forms that might be needed along that whole supply chain of data processing information. And as Dave also mentioned, it's really important part of the jigsaw is the new digitalization of IS 19650, because what that means is you've got the backbone for basically the information to travel through different doorways, and then you can access that data. But unless you have it in a standardized format, the computer will essentially just not understand what you're trying to put into there. So you won't actually get the performance benefits. So through the templater, it means that data dictionaries, you'll have a standardized way that you can know, if you've got a door, what actually are the door dimensions, and it will all be set in those different ways. And obviously there's different standards to do that as well. So it's supporting that process. And we're working in conjunction with the Construction Products Association on that as well.
But Jordan, just
Brilliant.
one thing to add to that I think we talk about the policy environment where government is looking to ensure things like building safety and quality, as well as making value-based decisions. And I think in the last few days, government has published its response to the procurement consultation green paper it ran earlier in the year. And of course, we expect government to increasingly in its procurement choices take account of broader things than just the initial capital costs. So they're very interested in understanding, how the decisions they're taking in their procurement choices are supporting improved social value or driving productive growth in the economy or levelling up across the nation. So you think about the data that we're providing in the products and the sub-assemblies and across the piece. If we're able to capture in that data carbon used in production or jobs supported in the northeast of England, then that will help people make a choice that isn't just how cheap can I buy it and buy it flat packed from Southeast Asia. They can start to factor in those broader aspects other than just cost and technical performance, start thinking about those other key value drivers. So that getting the data flows correct and understood, not just on the demand side, but on the supply side, will help the market develop things that align with those value drivers and help government and other private sector clients who are interested in their ESGs to make better value-based decisions that support those broader outcomes. So the data and how it's structured, how it's used, how it's shared is absolutely crucial to drive those broader outcomes rather than just the direct benefits to the project.
Brilliant. Actually brings me to something I wanted to ask you, David, sort of about that information management sphere. What are some of the big challenges, in that sort of, sorry, that came out really mumbled. What are the challenges from both an industry and business specific level when it comes to, information management? Obviously, it's been an issue for construction in the past. What have been the biggest challenges and how have they sort of been overcome?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got much better in terms of new project investments now. A new project kicks off. I think we've got much better at. One of the biggest things we've got as a challenge is retain the state. 99.x% of our built environment already exists, and one of the big things is how we can sensibly collect data that's going to fit into that ecosystem, and how we can start to connect it together. I think one of the biggest challenges still coming back to, and this is why I think the line of sight is so important, is to making sure that the data that we actually create and capture is not going to just help us in terms of, are we doing it, for best capital value, but as Keith said, actually start to be able to answer much more complex questions now. Is this project going to meet our ESG goals? Is it going to give value to the community? Is it going to support and optimize our asset management system? We kind of skip that often. We start to think about, oh, these are the project information requirements, but now we're starting to become much more mature. And I think some of our tools, such as the line of sight, is going to put a lot more time and focus on thinking about all the information requirement to answer all these organizational level questions, as well as the project ones. I think one of the biggest constraints we've had is been in terms of capability and capacity, especially in terms of information management. But I think we are starting to see much more, if you like, coming out of academia. And one of the things, and I must admit, it's quite surprised me, last week was World Skills within there. Now, you look at lots of countries around about the world, I mean, they celebrate this as a major, almost a sporting achievement. If you looked up, Motherwell College, the amount of further education ones, that the digital skills, the awards that we got in the UK were incredible. And I think that's shown we are starting to create the capability and capacity that's maybe been a big inhibitor to what we're doing. So let's look at where we're at. I think now we've got things like the UK BIM framework that's going to help do it consistently within there as well, but also proportionately. I think that's one of the big things. Everybody's tried to take a model and apply it to every single project. And the big part now in terms of our frameworks is something that you can dial down or dial up it's got a shall consider to meet the needs of different appointments within there as well. We've got ingrown capability within there. I think the other big thing as well is, I mentioned within there, our value framework. People are now at last seeing the value of doing information management, be it in terms of, you know, an estate that's compliant within there, a record of statutory compliance with there, but also now how it can start to tie into there. So I think we've now got the perfect storm to actually make this happen as well. And I think in the UK we've been on a journey, but also have a look. I think one of the big things as well is, you know, we had our Global BIM Summit last week. The amount that we are now exporting in terms of professional services around information management from the UK is fantastic. So I think we should be especially proud of the work. I mean, I mentioned our further education establishments, but also UK businesses, especially small architectural and, you know, businesses that are actually now leading and being at the vanguard of this journey.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I actually had a similar question for you, Trudy, about sort of, I know that you touched on even firms that are already on this journey are coming at it from different angles and that sort of thing. So what has been like the sort of biggest challenges, and both from a business and industry-wide level, to create sort of a cohesive approach when, you know, everyone started from different spots?
You know, language is actually been a consistent challenge for us. There's probably some people listening to this that know that the word glossary is almost like a swear word now. We talk about platforms, and we talk about kits of parts, and we talk about an MC, and we talk about off-site, and it's used and potentially misused in lots of different places. So actually getting consensus of understanding is really key to being able to capitalize the opportunities herein. And there will always be variants, and there will always be new acronyms, because we always have to come up with acronyms for things, but actually getting a consistent level of understanding and helping people to identify where they are on the journey. And actually that there isn't a right or wrong answer here. What we're trying to do is bring things together in a way that we will move towards. So that development framework, like I said, it has these stages, and at the moment we think that those are the right progressive steps to take when you're starting from scratch. But many people aren't, and many people have come at it from a different direction. So what we're doing with the case studies that we're looking at is looking at those individual organizations' journeys and where the common elements are, and then we're building up some decision trees. So when is material taken into consideration, which direction you go and why, so that we can identify the nodes, the crossover points, and perhaps therefore the opportunity for development along the same journey, as opposed to where things need to split out and will address different needs. So we recognize that if we understand the language and we can come together around the terms and the processes overall, then multiple different parties will be able to develop their own product platforms in parallel, but possibly with more convergence as we go forward, as the proof of the benefits is being realized. And of course, the feedback cycle is so important to be able to inform and grow together.
Amazing,
Okay.
Thank you so much. No, that's
On
oh, sorry.
the demand side there, John, because I mean, one of the things the construction industry has been historically very good at is responding to what clients have asked for. So if clients have asked for the wrong thing in the wrong way, that's exactly what they've got. So a lot of the work we've been doing with Cabinet Office, with Treasury, with IPA, and with the government departments is trying to help shape the demand side. So we've been doing some work to look at the maturity of government departments and their ability, as Trudy mentioned earlier. But if they all ask for the same thing in a different way, it's not really going to support that aggregation and that amplification. So, that's why, those three areas of our program that we have to get in harmony is that developing of those technical processes, that building of capability in the market. But really, we need to get the right client demand side triggers in there. Otherwise, we won't create the market in the same pace and scale that we could and deliver those transformation objectives.
I mean, that makes complete sense, and I like that wording. It's good. It's good. We have had a question come in, and I think the answer to this is probably the Hub website, but I will put it all to you. I've had a few questions come in about where people can access different tools like the Beta Operation and Performance Carbon tool, or there's a few different ones that have come in through here. Is all of this accessible through the Hub website? Is that the best place for people to find these resources that you've all been talking about?
It should be, yes. We've refreshed our website, so it should make it easier to find all of those outputs, and it will provide links to things that may be held elsewhere. So yeah, that's my starting point.
Brilliant. Okay, so that's our first piece of advice to everyone. Check out the Hub website and you should be able to find what you're looking for there.
Jordan, just to say as well, if you can't find any of the digital ones from, as Keith said, the link should go through. You know, we're made up of our free partners in terms of BRE, MTC, and the Centre for Digital Built Britain. A lot of the tools I mentioned are on the Centre for Digital Built Britain one. So if the link doesn't work through from the CIH one, if you go onto the Centre for Digital Built Britain, and they're all under publications. I checked this morning, so they all should be there. But if you can't get routed through CDB, publications, and there's a lot more than I'm sure we've all collectively mentioned today. There's enough to keep everybody going over the festive period in terms of knowledge and learning.
Just what everyone needs around Christmas, I reckon. Some light reading. Yep. So I did just have a quick question that came through about the platform quality assurance framework and processes being developed from other sectors. Was there any examples of like best practice that's been applied from other industry into construction? That was one of the questions that we've had come through.
So I'll take that. So this is based on advanced product quality processes used by other industries such as automotive, aerospace, and so on. And we've basically converted and applied it within construction. So there's already, you know, some world-leading manufacturers of the high volume products that use these processes already in their businesses. And what we're doing as the Hub is trying to translate that into, you know, bite-sized chunks for industry to adopt it and gear up. I don't know, do you want me to mention brands that already use it within the construction sector? But if they want to get in touch, I'll do that separately, I think. But, you know, some of the, you know, like imagine if you've got a screw manufacturer, they would have to produce masses of those. So they're probably using those processes already.
Perfect. And I would be remiss not to ask, as you've all mentioned, you know, September next year is where things are wrapping up. Is there a, you know, a handover process? Is there a soft wind up? What happens come the end of September?
So we have to produce, you know, we have to sort of complete our contract, but we will produce the outputs in a way that they become enduring beyond the life of the contract. So, you know, we may hand over some of those tools to, for example, Cabinet Office or the IPA. There may be things that industry take up, but we'll set out a clear legacy plan for each of the key outputs. So a lot of the stuff that we've been developing through Cambridge University and the Centre for Digital Built Britain, we'll hand that over to the UK BIM Alliance to take forward. Now we're some of the work we've been doing on exports, we're aligning that now with the export strand that's been run through Construction Leadership Council. So each of the key assets and outputs will have a legacy plan associated with it. And then clearly what we want to do is make sure they remain live and updated and adopted as we move forward. So we'll be setting that out in due course.
Brilliant. I think I probably need to start wrapping things up, but a nice way to do that, I think, would sort of be for me to ask each of you if you could give everyone one takeaway from today's session, or things that they should be keeping an eye out for, or things that they should know. What would that be? And I don't want to pick on anyone this time. So does anyone particularly want to go first?
Well, I think I'm sure you go first.
I think for me, it's that we've thrown a huge amount of information at you today, and dozens of different sources. Don't be overwhelmed by it. What we're actually doing and what we'll be doing moving forward is making this as intuitive and as accessible as possible. And you don't have to do it all at once. This is about finding a way that suits the individual organisation to be able to start to change what they do and how they do it. And the benefits will be realised, but just don't be overwhelmed. It will all be okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, I
Keith?
think it will be okay, but there is a real opportunity for businesses to be part of what is clearly a direction of travel in terms of how the built environment is moving forward, how it's able to embrace new technology, how the new policy drivers that come from governments and regulators are really pushing the industry down a path. So I think that the opportunity for industry to develop new capabilities, tools, products, solutions to take advantage of this market and make sure that UK businesses are able to thrive and prosper and grow and be more sustainable and be more profitable. Now, we're really keen to enable that market transformation to take place. And so, we will be setting out how clients can take advantage of these outputs, how manufacturers can take advantage of these outputs, how consultants can, how contractors can, how exporters can. So we're going to try and tailor it so it becomes almost an interactive playbook for those key stakeholders. So they're able to say, what does it mean for me? What do I need to do in my business to take advantage of these opportunities? How do I need to address the market? How do I need to engage with clients? So we're going to try and make it as easy and intuitive for business to be able to adopt and adapt to take advantage of the innovations that are coming through.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Just to echo what Keith and Trudy are saying, it's, we're trying to make it easier for everybody else to understand and interpret what all the new sort of rules and regulations might mean and policies, but give you some of the tools to gear up to embrace this technical digital revolution that we're in, because we've got to sustain businesses moving forward, and there's got to be a massive cultural shift in the industry to improve productivity, and obviously reduce your carbon and so on. So we've got a raft of tools and support for you. So just get in touch and we can help sort of navigate you around whatever it is you're trying to figure out. So yeah, just get in touch.
And David?
Yeah, Jordan, number one, I'd say just get started. It's a hugely important, but we talk a lot about technologies, we talk a lot about process, but one of the other big things in our program as well is, if we're serious about transformational change, it needs to be about people. It needs about behaviours, it needs about the values. So as much when you look at our work, I think we create a framework that's going to help, if you like, engage our people, take them on, there are different pathways for digital and change within there as well. I think at the heart of it is, once we've worked out organisational critical success factors, it might be to do with ESG, it might be low carbon, just get people around about it within there. Think about information requirements, the data needs, the upskilling that's going to be required, but bring people to the table. And I think that's the key thing. And start with purpose. I think once we've got clear purpose, then it all starts to flow from there. So for me, one of the big things that I love is our line of sight, because it starts with, it creates that alignment, a big idea, but then how a big idea can translate, get alignment top up and top down. But for me, it's all about our people, the behaviours, the values that we build round about this, or it won't happen. And I think when you look at all our work, it addresses that as much as the free to use tools as well.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much for your time, and thank you to the Hub for organising today and for your partnership this year. It's been such a valuable experience for us and for our audience, so thank you so much. To everyone whose questions we didn't get to, I'm sorry. We will make sure those are passed along, so hopefully they'll end up with the right person. And if it's something particularly important, get in touch. That's what everyone's message seems to be, so please do feel free to reach out. Yes, the session will be available on demand by the same way you've joined now. It will still be free, so please feel free to pass that along to anybody else who you think will benefit from today's session. That's about it from me. So a huge thank you to our panelists, a huge thank you to our audience, and goodbye.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jordan.
Sure.